It is official. We have now started the event. And so welcome everyone to Black Entrepreneurship, a mother-daughter conversation featuring Nashara McHale and Jade Everett, the co-founders of 88 Dreams. My name is Elena Romero, and I'm assistant professor in the AMC department at FIT, and I will be tonight's moderator. Before we get started, I need to make some personal thank yous, and I need to thank the Office of the President, Dr. Joyce Brown, along with FIT Diversity, the Diversity Council, and everyone that made this event possible. So thank you for allowing us to share this important dialogue tonight. Again, just as protocol, if everyone in the room can continue to have their mics on mute, it will assist us in not having, any kind of unwanted noise or distractions for the evening. And I want to again thank all of you who attended tonight's session in advance. So I want to start off with a little bit of data just to kind of put tonight's conversation in perspective. Data from the Small Business Administration, the SBA, indicates that Blacks own 2.6 million businesses, or 9.5% of all businesses. And 40% of those businesses are women-owned. Women-owned businesses in the US represent 12.3 million, and they generate $1.8 trillion a year. Just last year, U.S. women started 1,221 net businesses every day. Meet two of those women. Tonight, you'll get to know Nashara McHale and Jade Everett, the mother-daughter duo behind Hoop 88 Dreams, a premier e-commerce platform that specializes exclusively in the elevated hoop earrings for that inner girl and fly girl in you. Founded in August of 2019, the idea behind Hoop 88 Dreams was to offer widely popular and versatile hoops, stylish for anyone to wear it, whether it was on the streets or inside corporate boardrooms. McHale and Everett have strategically chosen to sell their products online, bypassing traditional brick and mortar retailers and opting instead to build an elevated hoop earring business exclusively around classic styles. Tonight's discussion is going to focus around three themes: Black entrepreneurship, the Black family and Black-owned businesses, and absolutely the idea of brand building in this time of COVID. Please, at this time, help me welcome Nashara McHale and Jade Everett. So I've had the pleasure, Nashara, of knowing you for many, many years, and Jade as well. I first met you as a reporter for DNR and later Women's Wear Daily. I documented part of your story in my book, Freestyling How Hip Hop Changed the Fashion Industry. And now I'm, of course, a fan of Hoop 88 Dreams. I'm actually wearing some of your merchandise tonight. But many people don't actually know your story the way I do. So, Nashara, where does your story begin?
It's fair to start in the early 1980s, being of mixed race, half Chinese, half Jamaican, raised by my divorced Chinese mother and brother in the housing projects in Coney Island. And simultaneously, I was growing up with hip hop culture. And I loved every aspect of hip hop culture so much. And it's such like the 80s for me was like coming of age. That was that decade for me. And like I said, I fell in love with every aspect, including what we called then big truck jewelry. And that jewelry was worn by drug dealers, their girlfriends, and hip hop artists. And that is when I fell in love with the gold hoop.
So take us on that journey. When is your first vivid memory of rocking or wearing hoop earrings?
I think it was like, my mom didn't pierce my ears, so I was like 12, and I went and got my ears pierced. And I think in that era, a lot of kids were doing a lot of things earlier than like what we would think they would be doing now. So I got my ears pierced, and then I was old enough to, do little odd and end jobs, and I saved my money up and went to Canal Street and got my first gold hoops. And those hoops were, at the time, they were gold nugget hoops. Gold nugget, that style was very popular, and I got it in like a shrimp shell kind of style. So that was I bought my own hoop earrings. It wasn't, I had a unique relationship to it. It wasn't like my mom handed, there's a rites of passage for some cultures. And, but for me, I actually, it was a byproduct of hip hop culture and the music and what people were wearing at the time.
Now, the earrings had quite a significant value to you. And in knowing your story, can you share a little bit about that dynamic between you and your mother and earrings?
Because I was half Chinese and half Black and being raised by a Chinese mother in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and growing up, like literally hip hop is like my big brother, right? So I'm growing up with the culture. It was like how I identified being a Black woman. It was like it became like this badge of honor, right? And for my mom, I think there was an aspect of her that the model minority, be understated, follow, don't be ostentatious, don't bring any attention to yourself. And I don't think she really cared for it. So anytime I was not in line, meaning didn't come home or broke curfew, she took those hoop earrings and I was gonna die. Like, and I, it's until this day, hoop earrings have that same feeling for me. It's like, it's the last thing you put on before you head out the door, and so that was the relationship that I had. That was unique because she kept a collection of my hoop. Obviously, I broke curfew a lot. And and then I would work, and I had, my working papers and I had some jobs, and it was just like this dance that we had. She would take them, I would go out and I would save my money. And at that time, it was like I couldn't buy the biggest ones because those were really expensive. But I was wearing gold hoops, and that's the relationship. Mm-hmm.
So would you say that entrepreneurship was in your bloodline?
I like to say that. I mean, my mom would tell you this story, and she loves this story about me making blue milk chocolate Smurf chocolate lollipops and selling them for 50 cents in junior high school. And she was like really proud of that, and that was my first, that's the story, that's the thing that sticks out. And then I would do little side jobs, but I was hustling, like not hustling, but working. It was entrepreneurship. And I was like, I made some chocolate lollipops. And then, as a young adult at PNB Nation, I learned that my grandfather in Jamaica was a well-respected tailor and had a whole business. And he was the go-to guy in Kingston for all the businessmen in Jamaica to get their suit. And my father and my grandfather had a difficult relationship, so I didn't have a relationship with my grandfather. But when I learned that story as a young adult, being in the business, and it was something that I was both happy and proud of, and it paused, it went for a pause for me. That is in my bloodline.
That's a good transition. So how did you get into the fashion business?
I got into the fashion business. My point of entry was with PNB Nation, and PNB Nation was a New York City-based streetwear brand that helped create and establish the streetwear category in the early 90s. And we dressed everyone from Lauryn Hill to Jay-Z to Eminem to Lil Kim, and wardrobe like all of the great 90s, television shows and films, including like the Chappelle Show. The company was founded by 5 graffiti artists. I was introduced to the brand based off of a T-shirt that is, we called it, the style name was 3 names, and then the style name morphed into, sorry about that. The style name morphed into Hello, My Name Is. And on that T-shirt were 3 names of 3 Black people who were killed in the early 90s by New York City police officers. And so that was, those 3 names are Michael Stewart, Eleanor Bumpers, and Phil Pinell. And that was on the front of the T-shirt. That was the first screen. The back screen was a upside down pig with an X in their eye, and that was like anti-establishment and our kind of spin, the PNB Nation spin on, crooked cops. So my brother showed me that T-shirt, and I was like, what? That's hot. And that was like, Generation X coming off of, the civil rights, we're the generation of the civil rights movement, right? And we're creating, and we're speaking, and we're talking, and we're talking about how we really feel and creating spaces for ourselves. And I said, I want it in, I want it out. I was like, look, I just bought a brownstone. I had 2 small young children. I was like, I'll intern because this is a lifestyle. This is the culture. This is who we are. So he conceded, right? And so that was my entry. And shortly after, the co-founders decided to make me a principal partner in the company in recognition of my work and contribution to the brand. And that, to me, as a Black woman in the early 90s, was a milestone in my career. Yeah.
So what was it like working in a male-dominated space, and that space being hip-hop culture and also the fashion industry?
So remember, it's streetwear, and then like streetwear then was like young men's, right? So that's, we were creating for ourselves. So that was the, demographic, right? So it's young men's, it's male dominated, it's a male's point of view. And it was difficult, it was hard, it was lonely. I think the only person in the space was April Walker, and I really she was like the North Star for me in terms of like, in my head. I didn't get to know her until later on, but like that's my sister. And then there was another Black woman, her name was Judy from Nappy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was difficult. It was difficult, and I think you said it best. You said it best on the remix film, Misa Hilton's remix film, when you said is the 3 Fs. And I can't throw the F-bomb here, but we'll improvise, right? They either want to F you, they either want to F you over, or they want to get you the effing out the way. And energy like that, like just like an energy that is unsettling, navigating the waters and wanting to be taken seriously, and not shying away from being a woman, right? Because we all like to feel confident and beautiful, and that's that whole like socialization that we have, right? That's something that's there. We're not gonna unpack that tonight, but you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, but it was an exhausting dance, and then to be respected in that.
So during that time, you were a mom of 2. How did you navigate the balancing act of juggling career, parenting, and home?
I didn't do a good job. I don't feel like I did a great job. I didn't have a playbook. I didn't have, at the time, I didn't have a community, right? I was a really young mom. So I was naive. I didn't know how to ask for help. You know, that's a big thing. You know, how do you do that when you feel like you have so much to prove, and, you know, you're a young teenage mom, you know, and you don't want to be statistic, and you're like, I still dream out loud because it's a hip hop culture where, you know, our resistance, you know, our revolution of that generation was to create spaces that we didn't exist in, and, you know, be intentional about that, and intentional of where we were spending our money, or what needed to be created for us, and so we could feel good.
At this point, Jade, I'm going to bring you into the conversation. What's your viewpoint, being, you know, fairly young during that time period, of watching mom go at work, balancing home life, and obviously taking care of you and your sister?
For me, because I was so young, I was about 8 years old, I want to say, when things were really picking up. I think the biggest takeaway for me was that I did see my mom exist in this male-dominated space, that and I took away that I could do anything. So maybe not so much that I understood that, you know, entrepreneurship was in my blood, but I saw that. I saw how she carved a space for herself in that environment, and it embedded in me that anything was possible.
Mm. Cheryl, what were some of the challenges that you can kind of remember and outline being a Black entrepreneur?
I think one of the biggest things is just, it's very subtle. It's subtle, right? It's these subtle messages that is either or, like it could only be one or two in the space, that it couldn't be a community. You know, it's like the psychology of Black business. I think it holds true in every area of Black life, that is not equal, and it's unjust, and the gap is so huge and large. So if it comes to financing, understanding the business, finding resources, you know, I think we need to keep continuing. I don't think it's, you know, like creating community, right? Because in that dialogue, you learn so much. And I think other communities do that really well. And I think that we have the ability to do that as well, too. We just have to keep working at it, and then keep fighting for it. So in any environment you're in, whether you're, you know, a member of an organization, whatever table you have a seat at, or sitting at FIT and saying, like, look, I want to see this, and I need to see this, and I'm demanding to see it, not for just a moment, not just for a month. You know, I want it documented somewhere. I want some history. You know, who's going to write the history? How will you allow us to write our history here at, you know, as the Black student body? If you need some support, what resources are you going to give us? So it's back to resources, right? It's back to this conversation, right? It's back to, you know, what you feel like, you know, you're comfortable with asking. Sometimes you're like, we can't answer that. It was even a possibility, right? And I think that's fascinating and sad. And then I see the faith and the hope, because we're having dialogue about it, and we're talking honestly. And that's always something that, now that I've gotten older, you know, want to talk about and be honest, so you could just have those little takeaways, and you make it what you want, and pursue your life the way that you think is fit for you, and that you'll be proud of.
Jade, I know you're kind of early in your entrepreneurial roots. What's your standpoint, your viewpoint and the possible challenges you or other entrepreneurs might be facing?
I think just the obvious COVID-19, right? So just let's talk about what's happening right now and how difficult it is to either start or sustain a business, right? But just in terms of, I think to my mom's point, in terms of being a woman and then being a Black woman entrepreneur, it can be quite difficult. But I like to think that doors are opening up. The new generation is doing a lot of great work. And we're seeing things happening now that we've never seen before. So I think those, the challenges are still there, but there's so much hope for what it can be, what entrepreneurship can be in the years to come. Just all the businesses and the Black women, young women who are starting businesses in this climate is astonishing. It's amazing. So the challenges are there. They've been there, but there's hope. And we're seeing traction and movement, and I think that's awesome.
So let's transition a little bit. Jade, when was the first time you can recall falling in love with the hoop earring?
Man, I think it was before I could talk. My mom has pictures still in her home to this day. I think I might have been 2, with hoop earrings and a little gold chain, and then it just kind of kept going. And so I can't even tell you where it starts or where it ends, but it was embedded. My experience was a little different. She passed that love down, and I can't even tell you where it started. It's just always kind of been there.
Shara, you talked a little bit about P&B, really, and that's kind of your entree full force in the fashion industry. What are some of your earliest recollections of P&B and hip hop really exploding in fashion?
Well, the P&B, the streetwear category was part of like that hip hop culture halo effect. It's like the music, and then you needed something to wear with that music and say the same thing or be in sync, that anti-establishment kind of relationship. But I think that for me, it really started with like Dapper Dan. For me, seeing the flip, right? Luxury out of context, and that was actually in the era where I fell in love with big truck jewelry. So that look, so it's like taking looks out of context. So, and we were doing that very early on, whether it was guys with polo in a different way, tennis sneakers in a fresh different way. So, and then we always bought out of like war clothes and style out of necessity, like in terms of recycling. I think April, I like sat in a clubhouse with April Walker talking about sustainability and how it correlated to hip hop, and it's just like we had to reinvent clothing for our style for the times that we were living in and what we were creating. So we were always like kind of creative. So it's hard. It's kind of like, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's a lifestyle. In the very beginning, it was a lifestyle, right? So in this category, like when you think about what hip hop has influenced, and we're talking specifically about fashion, it's about that interpretation, what you want to see and what you want to create. So, and we grew up doing that. We dreamed about playing tennis. So we got what it would look like playing tennis. We dreamed of, I think at one point I lied and said my father took me, I went to like this really prestigious summer camp, and long story short, I lied and said, yeah, my father, takes us golfing and I drive the buggy. But it was like inspirational, right? So then you have the golf vests. It's just like, it's what we did. So it's hard to say like when that happened for me.
So what happens to P&B Nation?
P&B blew up on a certain level. We had like an $11 million business. And a lot of mentors got into the business. And sometimes I think when you fast forward and you know, when you're creating a brand, you want to know the why. You know, they tell you, what is the why? What is the reason they're going to buy your brand? What's the why? And when that why, we didn't know we were branding at that time. Okay, so that whole thing, you know, we created that as well. And we was able to answer the why. And that was really extraordinary and interesting, and people, and they were like, and we answered the why, and it's a multi-million-dollar business. So I lost track. But the point is that PNB in that moment when the environmentals got in there, they couldn't answer that question. And the market just really got flat, and we sold the trademark. I mean, so many, like, it's like a long story, but you know, the retailers and how we had to deal with the retailers, and how when the governmentals got into the game, you know, and we started doing licensing deals, you know, how they wanted us to grow the business. They didn't really understand what we were trying to do, and they just saw it as big business. And so when we didn't conform, and they created brands like South Pole or Loves, or you know, and it had this full image. And I think what happens is that when you come from that point of view, you're like insulting the customer. And so we got tired, and we sold the trademark.
So what was life after PNB? What was your next adventure?
My next adventure, wow, I got divorced, you know, got remarried. We married a prominent hip hop music producer, had another baby, and in true Shara McHale fashion, you know, I pivoted and into the family business and began to manage my husband's career in the music industry. And you know, it's in my nature. And it was hip hop culture, so that was, you know, that's an in for me. And there was areas where, you know, the fashion and the music overlap. But I wasn't particularly happy, and I was looking for a viable way back into the fashion industry. And then I found it.
And what was that?
The Hoop 88 Dreams. And, you know, I definitely stumbled upon it. And then I was like, Jade, I was like, I was like, I can't find hoop earrings in one place. And again, it's the nature of like what Toni Morrison says. Like if there's something that you want to read, write it. So I couldn't find the platform that just specializes exclusively in hoop earrings. And I turned to Jade and I was like, Jade, you want to do this? And she's like, yeah, I want to do this. You could talk about that. And she came up with the name.
It was really just as simple as having like a conversation. Like, I can't find any earrings. I'm like, right, can't find any earrings. Maybe we should sell them. That's a great idea. Like, it kind of was just that organic. And I think to my mom's nature, it's because she has an entrepreneur spirit, going back to the chocolate Smurfs. It's like, see something with a boy.
Right.
It's really just as simple as that, like maybe 2-minute conversation, and then it was like off to the races.
Yeah,
so.
and we thought about, we sat right there in that moment. It was like, what would be the name? And it's direct to customer, right? We're gonna online only, right? Let's do that. It's 2019. You know, we saw the shift in retail, and we sat there. We came up with the name. It was like, hey, hold all the social media handles. And we locked down the handles, and then we were like, okay, we'll return to it. And it was really kind of fast, you know, putting on that hat of, you know, just coming from my background and saying, what do we need? We need manufacturers, we need, you know, all those things. It's just different players. you know, and there are nuances, but I'm just so excited about the platform because it's fun and I can answer the why. We can answer the why, you know.
So talk to us a little bit about what exactly is Hoop 88 Dreams. What kind of products do you offer? What are your price points?
Our price 20 to like 8 was our answer to, you know, not wanting cheap earrings, but can't afford fine jewelry. And what happens with us is that we lose the side of a hoop, and then you're like, oh my God, you know, I got to get another pair of earrings. And, you know, culturally, for me, the hoop earring is like what, you know, sneakers are to guys, and, you know, in you know, hip hop culture, you know, that streetwear kind of like, so you have multiples. And I, I wanted that sweet spot. And that's what we are. We're like a platform that specializes exclusively in hoop earrings, elevated styles. You know, I guess when you do something for yourself, then you're the demographic, right? Right? You're the core consumer. You know, they say now, you know, you want to do a buyer persona, the customer persona. Who's that person? You know, and that was really fun for me because I was like, and who am I? And what are my relationships? And I have my daughter and I have my granddaughter. So like we were really building on the collection and just the inspiration, like right? Like I was just like, okay, the 80s is where mommy fell in love with hoop earrings. This is the decade you were born. Like this makes this just like answering the why. And then who would you be? Like who's your customer? Like and it's just like a dialogue that I'm having with my kid. Well, she's an adult. But you know what I mean, right? So, you know, and it's just like, okay, and, you know, it's like it's this thing like of creating like black excellence and like heritage brands. I mean, like I'm like that. Like I'm like, where's our Burberry's? Where's our Gucci's? Where's our Estee Lauders? Is it possible? And I say yes, it's possible with just you know saying rewiring and say yeah, that's totally possible because I want it, right? And so that's the blessing as well as taking that you know my journey, right? It's like it's not straight. And when you're going, you know, that's not your final destination either, right? And it's just like coming, you know, this journey to get to, you know, this place with Jade, right? And to have this platform with the potential of, you know, Caitlin wanting to be in the business or just being on the, you know, board of directors. Like, you know, it's like, I like to think that, man, and that's kind of what I envision for the brand and the platform.
So Jade, talk to us what it's like being in business with your mom, right? Tell us about the milestone, the challenges, and the lessons from the experience.
So it's like the coolest thing ever. And it's also probably one of the most challenging things ever, right? Because for one, it's your mom that never changes, right? So that can be kind of tricky navigating the business and building a business. But I think the coolest part about it is that we get to create something together. And it's I guess the idea of passing something down, right? Like specifically for like African American women, or for Black people in general, it's hard for us to trace our roots. So to be able to create something together, to be able to have the love for the earrings the way that I do because of my mom's love for it, and to see how my daughter kind of now is taking to it, and how she's excited about the business and excited about earrings and watching her fall in love with it is really it's so awesome. I don't think you can get that anywhere else with the, you know, besides having this business with your mom so that you can kind of create legacy. That's the biggest takeaway.
Shara, why did you want to go into business with Jade?
I wanted her to understand me better. I really did. I felt like she didn't understand me well as the woman, young woman. And it was another way, like another pathway to connect with your kid if they want to connect that way. I think sometimes, you know, being a parent and the different stages of children, and there's a stage where they don't want to have anything to do with you. You're like, what? And you're so annoying. And you're like, really? You know, and you then this young adulthood, and you know, you're trying to give all this information, and they're like, kind of, I know it already. Um, and then it becomes this space that I'm just like, because of my unique experience of being a young mom and being an entrepreneur and not having quite the best balance that I would have liked to have, you know, coming full circle and saying like, hey, I just want you to kind of, you know, I want to bond this way. Are you down to bond this way? And it is definitely a question you have to ask if that's okay, you know, because um, some kids don't want to. And you can see that in different stories, and there's a ton of stories out there. But being a young mom and being just wanting that relationship, an additional relationship is, you know, definitely that.
So would you say working together has helped reinforce that bond between mother and daughter?
I think so. For me, I think, yeah. I don't know. I think so.
For me, I think I definitely am learning. I think I'm learning my mother as a woman and not so much the mom. I think that I'm able to understand how big her PMD day specifically, how big that was, how much of a like game changer. She was one of the first ones. How difficult that must have been. And it just allows me to, as a mother now to my own little girl, it allows me to understand the woman as opposed to being the little girl who maybe didn't understand. And you can't understand what's happening when you're in it and you're so young. But in hindsight, to be doing this now, it helps me kind of understand her and her challenges and triumphs as a parent, as a young parent, as a businesswoman, entrepreneur, 100%.
Shara, they say failure can breed success. If, as you reflect upon your career prior to Hoop 88 Dreams, what would you say were some of the failures that you can own up to now, and what's made you the woman and the businesswoman that you are today?
In my father's words, he would say, that question is loaded. Like, and then I'm gonna lose track of what I'm talking about. And I'll be like, what was the question again? I think I think failures are a necessity. And I think that we look at it and we say it and it has like this like kind of like connotation, and you get like you can't breathe and you have a little bit of anxiety and you don't know what that failure is gonna look like. You just don't want to embarrass yourself. And you know, I feel like in my mind, I've embarrassed myself a couple of times, you know, and there's huge learning lessons in that. And, you know, should I, you know, one of the biggest ones is like the power of no. The power of no, the power to stand firm in your intuition. And there's also the power of yes. And that there's, as a woman, I don't frame it as a failure, but it's very difficult to juggle. And we need to talk about how do you juggle that and how do you feel good in that. Mm-hmm. So if you say a failure, it's like, gosh, Shari, you didn't get a chance to smell your roses while you were walking down the meadows and you planted all these seeds and it's just beautiful. You're like, okay, and then the kids, and then, okay, all right, I gotta pull it together. And, you know, I think they don't see me. I think they're not taking, you know, they're not taking me seriously. You know, I think they're trying to get me out the effing way. And it's just like all of that, you know, where you could just, you know, learning how, you know, and again, I don't know if it's a failure, but for me, if I had to identify anything, is that I had to reset. And when I reset it, it was like, you know how you reset and they're like, hold it for 5 seconds and it feels like for 5 years, you know, and reboot. And then you're in all these like, you're like, wow, social media, wow, the internet, like that's the streets now. So then you're like, it's just the streets, you know? And so to me, failures is like kind of like where you shot for the moon and you didn't hit the moon, but you're among the stars and you can reassess. So, you know, that's really what it is.
Ultimately, where would you like to take your brand?
Wow, I mean, I really want to grow this business to be like a solid $5 million business, you know, something that, you know, is not too, I'm not looking to be like the next Amazon and hoop earrings, right? But I really want to be able to answer the why and to do what I like. I enjoy, you know, brand building and storytelling and branding, and be able to tell that story about, again, hip hop culture, right? And paint that, you know, paint that story of the love affair and really bring it, and have a legacy brand that my granddaughter, Jade, you know, whoever, I mean, it's like kind of like it's really open in the air. It really was just kind of seeing an opportunity and saying, okay, we could have like a really great business and we could do some other things. And this is part of our DNA. And it's just like, it would be shameful, like, not to do this because it's something that I want to see as a consumer. So, but that might change. I mean, Jade might say, Mom, I want to be the next Amazon and New Balance. And then, you know, I'll be like, well, how are you going to do that? You know, well, you know, who do we need to partner with? You know, and but you want
I like to jokingly say I like to be the Cardi B of the earring industry. You know how she started off real big on Instagram and the internet and kind of has transformed into this multi-million-dollar star, and we can't stop watching. I think, yeah, that would be amazing to just kind of be the place that you go for all things hoops, new and old. You know that you can get your solid pair that you wear all the time, that you know is reliable in any situation, and also want to be the place that you go when you need something funky. When you need something on a girls' night out or a date night, just the place that you don't even think twice. It's like, I know I go to Hoop Dreams for that.
And the perfect gift, you know, the perfect gift for, you know, that 8-year-old little girl, that 7-year-old little girl. We have a little mama collection that is just like, you know, Valentine's Day. You know, you're introducing her to the hoop, and you don't want anything too big. You want something that's super cute and to wear for special occasions. Yeah.
And to your point, Jade, you are building your brand, you know, organically and naturally. I mean, you do have a small celebrity following. I follow you on Instagram and have seen a number of postings from celebrities. I'll let you do the name dropping as to kind of who's been wearing it and how it's happened.
You know, it's more like social media is such a great, you know, platform, but you kind of put your products out there, and sometimes you don't know how people have gotten it, you know. So I would love to say that, you know, I hand walked a pair of hoops to Tracy Ellis Ross, and she's worn it in Blackish maybe 3 times in her pattern ad, which is a, you know, not the story, but she's wearing those earrings, and I don't know if her costume designer like really tracking it, but we were super happy about that. We have Tracy Ellis Ross, we have Sunny Anderson, who's a celebrity chef, Renee Louvel, who's a, you know, really respected R&B singer, and we're just getting started. I don't always assign product placement on celebrities as the point of success. I think how I gauge success is really about our end consumer and how we tell this story and how emotionally they connected to the platform and want, you know, they're saying like Hoop 88 Dreams is their first resource, right? So I'm not going to go to, well, we're not like Claire's, but I'm not going to go to a platform that has, chains, bracelets, and hoop earrings and studs and so on and so forth. I know that I want to go here because they're going to service my needs from A to Z.
Last question before we open it up to the audience. What advice would you give to Black entrepreneurs, specifically women as well? Want to take the question first, Jade or Sarah?
The advice is to do it, and to answer the why. And if you're passionate about it, do it. Find your community, do the research. I think it's a different time, and like to Jade's point earlier, you said it's an exciting time because you really can connect with some people over the internet. I just, and you can find that information. I mean, research is so much different. I mean, like, I don't want to age myself, but I mean, it was going to the library like heavy, right? And encyclopedias. I'm like, Google is like, dad. I'm like, wow. You can't, like, you know what I mean? It's just like, do it. You can do it. Like, don't, if you don't see it, the advice is if you don't see it and you want it, create what you want to see. There's no limit.
If I could just add, I'd say that it's a wonderful time to be a woman. It's a wonderful time to be a Black woman. Shout out to our vice president. Go for it. Go for it. We, especially this generation, we have so much power in our little thumbs here. Like our following, that's your audience. As long as you have something that you believe in, an idea, you have a platform. I bet everybody on this WebEx right now has a couple hundred people that are watching them on Instagram or Twitter. There's Clubhouse. There's so many different social media or social sites that kind of are driving the way businesses are being created, and definitely the way that businesses have to operate. So there's a lot of power right there. I think sometimes people get scared about starting. Who do I sell to? Who will listen to me? You'll be surprised who's listening to you right now, who's watching right now. So just go for it.
So at this time, I want to open up the floor for questions. I'm not sure how many we have. This is my first time doing a live virtual event. I think maybe we'll start off with a couple if you want to type it in the chat. I have given people the ability to unmute themselves. If we can do that, we can also take some live questions. So I've given you a little bit of extra incentive, everyone. I know that on paper, we said we were going to end the event at 8, but we suspected we were going to have a nice and rich conversation. So we're going to go up until 8:30. So at this time, you've got the entire time to ask every question that you've thought of or would love to ask to our guests. So, go right ahead, type in some of your questions in the chat. I'll kind of, again, assist in that moderating, or you can unmute and ask directly your question to Shara and Jade. All right, so I'm not sure if you're looking at the chat, ladies. This is a question for Jade. Do you have a background in the fashion industry prior to launching your business with your mom?
I actually do. I went to your competitor, so I will not say the name of the school that I went to on this Zoom. I mean,
you can. It's okay. We forgive.
Okay. So I graduated from LIM. I went to LIM. I studied fashion merchandising and management. I spent some time at a couple of different brands. So I was at Lacoste for a few years. I spent some time at Fendi. I spent some time at Ralph Lauren. So I definitely developed a love for fashion, and then kind of got my feet wet and hands into it on my own right. And then And I definitely tapped on my mom a lot, just about her experience and just how to navigate as a woman in those industries too, right? Because we know that they can be tough. But yeah, I definitely did have some experience, about 10 years, I'd say, in the fashion industry prior to launching the company with my mom.
All right. What were your first couple of steps in making 88 Dreams a reality after coming up with the concept of the idea?
We locked in our social media handle. We locked in the domain name. And then we began looking for manufacturers and suppliers. We began theorizing about the collections be and who would they be for, and the best part was coming up with the style names. That was so much fun because we were thinking about the customer and the inspiration. So like all of that, like, you know, those are, and the part that you don't like, and which is very necessary and is part of the wheelhouse, is the business model. That's not the fun part.
What's the design process like to kind of build your hoops in your collection?
We were talking from a consumer point of view of what we wanted to see in inspiration and who you're buying for. That's why it's always about, you know, the why and the customer persona. So what makes it so much fun is like, and I think what any entrepreneur, if they're like really the consumer, is like sky is the limit, right? Because you are the consumer. You know what you want, you know where you go, where you discover information. So all of that is really fun for us. And that's like we're the first, so we have three, right? And so it's myself as Generation X, you know, Jade as a millennial, and my granddaughter, who's 8 years old. And like we got three demographics that, and we're first, like, I think the kids now, when they're getting taught, and maybe, you know, someone can put it in the chat, what I understand is that when you're learning how to build out brands and finding out who your consumer and the why and where you can reach them, is that you create these avatars of people, right? And then you get into their head, behavior, marketing.
Just to piggyback off of the design, I think for me, it was a little bit even more like it was the void. So I was like, as the consumer, I was like, I need door knockers. I don't see them. I love them. I'm old enough to get them on my own. The last time that I had a pair was when you put them on me. I need a place where I can get them. And so that for me, that was like the first step to the design process. I was like, right now, this is where my heart is, and I think it's cool. Again, to Mom's point, when you are the consumer, it's a lot of fun to create in that way. Because you start with the void for yourself, and then you can start building out that customer and building out what you think or what you believe that customer would like and want.
How do you go about finding your manufacturers?
Well, you know, we launched in 2019, August 2019, and then COVID hit. So the strategy was, right, to frequent these trade shows, right? So this is how COVID impacts your business, because it's just the business model is like, in terms of finding manufacturers. So to be quite honest, we're in the midst, and it's a lot of research. And you know, when things are a little bit safer, then you go and you visit. So you know you can make a solid decision as to if this is a factory that you want to work with to manufacture your styles. Yeah. So we work with suppliers right now. And in selecting the suppliers, it's like it goes back to buying and merchandising, that putting on that hat and formula, and you know, buying the styles that you think that your consumer wants to see. Elevated styles, not, you know, nothing like flares, right? So it's like this, I don't want to say budget designer, it might be budget designer, but it's like it's right there in terms of a price point. To identify a price point is right above bridge, I want to say, in terms of price point, just going back into in terms of the business and buying and planning and what you're offering your consumer, right? Something that a hoop earring that you know is not going to turn. If you lose it, you're not going to be devastated. I mean, you're going to be frustrated because you've lost a hoop, but it's not like a $500, $700, $800 gold.
Right.
And that you can have it and it lasts like 2 to 3 years if you take care of it, right? It's gold filled.
What has growing your small business been like, and what is the hardest obstacle you've had to face in growing your business?
COVID. I'd say just because it's something we've never experienced before, right? Everything is different. Everything is different. The way business is being conducted, how you sell, where people are, how people buy, what people want to buy. It's all different, and we're all learning it on, like, on the go, on hand. And I think, our business was started in late 2019. So, to try to navigate your first year business during a pandemic is super, super challenging. So I'd say that that's probably been the biggest thing.
Yeah, being to just punctuate everything that we planned went right out the window. Sales projections, business model, just, going back to how we find our manufacturers and stuff like that.
Mm. What do you do to stay motivated and resilient as you both shoot Hoop 88 Dreams to the moon?
What do we do? I pray a lot. I do pray a lot, and I'm confident in the product. I'm confident in the dream. I don't want to seem corny, right? Because it's Hoop 88 Dreams, but I am really confident in that. And once you are passionate about something, it's contagious. Like, if you really believe in yourself, you really believe in what you're putting out there, and you believe in the story, and you're creating this emotion that is people proud and happy about,
I think for me, because it's so personal, I try to tap back into the nostalgia of where the love came from. So like, well, it's the 80s for you, but for me, it's like it's the late 90s, 99 to 2000s. Like, what that felt like, what the music felt like, what the vibe was like, what that imagery was like. It can be tough. It can be really tough to be in business and to be in business at this time. So finding those things, finding the reasons why you started it in the first place can really be really helpful when it's hard to stay motivated or resilient, right? So I'd say that.
Yeah, but you do get tired. Yeah, I don't want to you're like, wow, this is a lot, It's this thing that is the concept of like entrepreneurship, which is entrepreneurship is you're saying out loud, look, I don't want to work for anyone else for 40 hours. I prefer to work 100 hours for myself. That's the first lesson. Like, that's the first takeaway. It sounds so glamorous. And I'm not saying this to deter anyone, because it is a gratifying feeling when you have those successful moments. But the first conversation that you have to have with yourself is like, that's what I'm really saying. That's what I'm really saying to myself. I don't shut off the way that I would if I was working for someone else. And I'm not going to be resentful to my boss. I'm going to, I'm the boss now. So I'm going to be like, well, okay, what do I need? Sit down, sit down and take an inventory and be nice to yourself. And when you plant a seed, it's not the same season in which you reap, your harvest. And I think that with the internet and stuff like that, I mean, these things are really quick, but the basic concept is that things take time.
Another question from the audience. Who's your main target audience?
You want to answer that? Or I could, I feel like our core audience is the overlapping of the millennial and Generation X. So the real, like the sweet spot is 25 to 35. But usually when you market or you brand and you say like that's 25 to 35, and then you hit that target, everyone that's influenced by that target, that's outside of that target, you kind of get them. It's like this ripple.
The trickle up, trickle down.
Yeah. So,
well, I won't be showing my age, but I'm well over 35.
right. You know what I mean? But it's like when you select the music or you select the visuals, you know, it's like, again, we keep talking about this. This is a conversation. It's like you don't always have it like script it out, and you're like, boom, I'm putting it on a piece of paper, and this is what it is. Sometimes you do that, and then you start working and start branding, and you do these things, and you say, wait a minute, I'm looking, now we have some metrics. I'm looking at the data, and the data don't lie. Wow. I thought this was okay, and then what do? Like, you know, it's all
and just to piggyback off of that. When we talk about success and failures and just learning through business, you don't always get it right. Like sometimes you think that, oh, this is a great place to, you know, showcase our earrings and we'll do great here. And sometimes, you know, it's not the right place. And, you know, the audience that we thought we would have, we don't have. And then other times, you know, and you learn from that experience and then you try again. And then when you find a sweet spot, that's always nice. But
25 to 35, right? I mean, like we're like again, we're
past that point, but we're not gonna take that.
No, it's yeah, but it's like, you know, I mean, we're being as honest as possible.
Sure, of course. I don't take it so hard.
We've had people come up and say, man, that reminds me, my mom never used to let me wear those earrings, and they bought 2 pairs, right? And then like my pairs is like, we're like, oh yeah, give me that. Like I need all flavors of that. Like, you know, because it's for us, it's a little bit different, but.
And then for me, it's like nostalgia. It's like, I remember, you know, and then there's a customer base that is just their DNA. They're just like strictly hip hop. So it doesn't really matter the age, right? It's just like, I'm hip hop and this is symbolic of hip hop, you know, the door knockers. And then you go, you know, I mean, like, again, it's like this love affair with hoop earrings. I have a hoop earring for everything, for church. Like, you know, we got for 1 year, if you're, you know, you have to go to court, you know, it's like all that stuff. Like, you know, you get to teach a class, you know, there's levels to this.
Talk to me a little bit about the symbolism. You know, we briefly touched upon it in your childhood. For you, what does the hoop earring represent?
It's like a revolution. It's like the strongest women, the baddest women, the women that want to live out loud, the women that's going to ask a question, the women that potentially be called like, you know, it's like, you have style, you know. It's really that for me, and highlighting the women. Like I look for women, like found an image of Maya Angelou in hoop earrings, found an image of Betty Shabazz. I mean, it's culture too, right? It's celebrating women and culture. And I'm celebrating Black women specifically, and then women of color, and then all women. But of course, you know, I'm going to celebrate myself first because that's what we should be doing. And I think that is, you know, what we should not run away from, because we need to decolonize our minds, you know.
Talk to us a little bit about the history of the earrings. You know, I know you said you did some research. You know, do you want to share some great tidbits that you know that you feel people need to know?
You know, the fun fact for me was like, you know, the discovery of hoop earrings in Africa, and it was a civilization, Nubia, which is today's Sudan, right? So 400 BC. And I thought that was fascinating because there's a whole group of people who think that, like, you know, hoop earrings, you know, began in, you know, Greece, or not even Greece. Actually, Greece has a nice solid history too. but like in Europe, or I mean, how the Chinese work, you know. But yeah, for me, the history, you know, beginning in Africa in 400 BC in Sudan, like that was like huge. Like I was just like, wow, that's so dope. I don't see a lot of like, I'm still doing a lot more research just to the storyline of the hoop earrings, but I thought that was fascinating. I really like the 60s a lot too, you know, in terms of the Black Power movement, Black Panthers, and, you know, seeing Angela Davis wearing earrings. Um, that's a very interesting time period as well for me.
What advice would you give women going into business?
It's the same thing as being being a person of color. Like it's like as a Black woman, women, like, you know, the power of no, the power of yes, to go ahead and do it. To create that community of like minds, to rewire your brain and like and make that ask. I think that I know for me, at this times that I've had conversations with you, and you said, and I'll say like this opportunity came up, and I'm like, you know, I don't think I'm ready for this, and you're like, what? You're not ready? Like, you know, we like kind of second guess ourselves. So I think that's like a really big deal, like to say like I can do it. That's the advice, and then right after that, find your community.
And what a better place to start than FIT, right? You have like minds there. You have people. There's photographers. There's people that are designing, right? Depending on the business that you want to start, you can start right there. You have a community right there. So I think the big thing is to just go for it.
And I want to give a special shout out because my photographer is a FIT graduate, has a BBA in photography, Kadeem Prosper, and he shot my product images, which is on the website. And yeah, so I thought, you know, shout out Kadeem.
I've got another question. What are the top trade shows that you have found to be most beneficiary, if you've done trade shows in relation to your jewelry?
Well, we have many trade shows with our jewelry. I mean, I know apparel trade shows, but jewelry specifically, and I'm excited because I don't know, right? I'm just doing this research and I haven't been able to watch the shows or be in the market, right? Everything shifted. Like we were planning to walk the shows in March 2020, and you know what happened in March. And we were planning that back in August when we launched. So I don't have a list, but I'm researching it. Like I almost feel like, well, let me open up. Like
Yeah,
like it's on the Google Docs. But I've done like, you know, some Google searches and just like copy and paste and be like, okay, I'm gonna head down there. Actually, there's one. It's JIF, which is in Miami, and it's happening March 22nd to the 24th, which I'm gonna be down. So that's actually the first one I'm going to. But you know, I don't want to say that I'm an expert.
What would you say is your favorite style of hoop earring?
I'm a door knockers girl. Like I like the band. This is one of my favorites. And for me, in terms of style, it's more about size. I'm a go big or go home kind of girl. So the bigger the better.
What about you, Shara?
She got it from somewhere. You know, I was just like, and I'm older, but I end up wearing the biggest hoops ever. I've always loved large hoops. And, you know, I would wear like, I love door knockers, but not all the time is appropriate, right? So, you know, I love this style, which is a cleaner, classier style, but it's still larger. It's on the large size. But I like.
And this is much a question, but more of a comment. Thank you, Michael. FIT also has a jewelry design program as well. So back to that building of a community, there are quite a number of spaces where people really can go forward with that entrepreneurial effort. I want to shift gears a little bit. We've got, again, we decided to go a little bit longer. We're willing to stay around an extra 20 minutes. If there are more questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to transition a little bit. Shara, in terms of being an activist, that is also something that is a part of you and your work and the legacy that you're trying to build. Talk to us a little bit about the consortium that you work on and what the platform hopes to accomplish with the fashion industry.
The consortium is Anti-Racist Consortium, and it was founded in response to the George Floyd murder. A very good friend and colleague founded this organization, and I'm a founding member. Her name is Tracy McGregor, and she's based in LA. And when I tell you that May into June was the most emotionally draining time in the COVID kind of umbrella, it really did a number on the United States and the people of color in the United States, and specifically Black people. And so she founded this organization, and it was a call to action to organize underneath the community umbrella. So it was first, she launched it in June 19th, which is the anniversary of when slaves were freed, and they got the notification in Texas, right? So it took 2 years to let the slaves in Texas know that they were actually free. Anyway, so that date, June 19th, marks it. And in this community, we really study and we understand what the issues are, and we really talk about it, and then we collaborate. And it's like a really great group of people. I mean, scholars, lawyers, people in the entertainment industry, people in the media industry. And how could we make a difference in our sphere of influence? That's the mission statement, right? So when the elections occurred, we gathered and we talked about different strategies and, how you can call and so on and so forth in terms of the presidential election. When it came to the Senate race in Georgia, again, we collaborated, even on social media. First it's a place where you kind of like saying, I can't believe this is happening. And then turn around and then do the research. And so there's a report, it's called the Kerner Commission Report, and it was written in 1968. And it was a year research paper. And I might have some facts wrong with it, but the general idea of this report was to study African Americans in the United States and what was missing, and like what were human rights. And that's what we took on as the Anti-Racist Consortium, is to say like housing is a human right, healthcare is a human right, employment, welfare, and we have different committees to discuss that and see what we can do on a local level. And it's a very young organization. So we're really trying to figure it out, because it takes, ordinary people to really make a difference. And it's something that I've always, wanted to do by the simple nature of my ethnic background. It was really difficult to witness racism. And now in the height of, COVID and Asian violence, and, it's just like, it's not okay, right? So, as a child, I didn't know how, I didn't like it. I didn't like what I was witnessing, and I wanted to disappear. And then I went straight into like, when I was in high school, I was like, I'm going to create an organization, that's going to build trust between the Black and Asian community. I want some trust there. I want to open up the dialogue. and then I went straight into P&B. And to me, that was a form of activism. And it's very nature. And then now today with the anti-consortium is like, just being able to have those conversations and make those calls to action in my sphere of influence.
Speaking of call to action, we're pretty familiar with one of the calls to action towards the fashion industry being that call about donating 15%. Obviously, there's a lot going on. We're in a second civil rights movement. We're in this social awakening, a cultural shift, trying to be on the right side, trying to heal, have transparency, accountability, and kind of reintroduce concepts and things that we still have not completely addressed and corrected. What steps could the fashion industry take to kind of do right by a diverse group of consumers?
I just want to say they can do right by hiring more people, Black people. That's what they can do first, because if they do that, then the lack of insensitivity won't be so blatant, right? So for the consumer, right? So some of the missteps with some of the luxury fashion houses,
right?
It becomes a wealth issue, income issue in that gap and access, so that Black people, because it's about Black History Month, right? That they know that there's other opportunities within the fashion wheelhouse outside of designer, and that you can really make a difference. You could change the dialogue. It's not just the designer, right?
What's your looking at this from your generation?
I'd agree. I remember being at certain fashion houses and being the only person that was myself, feeling like if I saw someone else that looked like me, that I had to be better or try to outshine that person because there wasn't room for both of us. And I think that narrative has to change. There does need to be more opportunities outside just the designers, so that we have a space to exist. Because we can do great things if we just have the space to do
in the
so.
Education, right? The education. That's a really big component in terms of talking about FIT, because we're talking about an era, we're highlighting an era where a lot of the people like myself were self-taught. So we didn't have any roots in the fashion industry. We didn't typically work in the fashion industry.
Now, we talked about hiring people. I think that's a good start. But to some degree, it's almost too simple of a solution, right? It's a complex situation. We've addressed hiring. Is it just simply hiring more, right? What other things should designers, manufacturers, those of us in the industry that have the power to influence, have the power to truly impact change, what else should we be looking at? And you can think about the things that you're doing yourself through your company or through your activism work.
I mean, there's jobs, there's internships, there's grants. There's so many things that these companies can do. I think that Bragg is underfunded, to me, in my mind. How many seats are there for the buying programs with these retailers? It really does, is that income inequality. So I don't know what else they're gonna have to, shorten that gap. They have to close that gap, close the gap that really comes, that's based on income inequality.
I think also to representation, right? So I think that's important, to see we want seats at the table, but executives, right? So we want to be represented. I want to see more people that look like me on the runway. I want to just be represented as opposed to maybe my earrings or my hair, the hairstyles, right? So I think it goes, there's to your point, there's so many different facets. I want my daughter to know that, there's no limits, that she can run that show, she can run that company. And so I think like, you know, like the Dapper Dans of the world, it's taking too long. Like we want to see more of that. And I think that's really important because then it gives the catalyst to say, hey, this is what I want to do and I can do it. And someone.
And let's be fair, right? That a lot of what we're seeing has been a knee-jerk reaction, right? The issues have been systemic and long gone, long drawn, and now we're starting to see, uh-oh, wait a minute, we might have a problem at our bottom line. We should do something. We need to do more than just, you know, do what's politically correct or what appears to be right. I think this day and age, the consumer is so savvy and can smell authenticity, right? And what you believe, and they're holding companies accountable, socially responsible, moving forward, trying to move not just the business, but our society in a positive direction. Michael made a great point about needing more mentors, more support. One of the things that I saw lacking in the urban fashion business is that mentorship where we could then pass the torch to that next generation. Those of you who built that business, some stayed in it, many didn't, but who did we leave the reins to, right? So I agree that idea of mentorship and support, Michael, is a really, really good point. In addition, Michael mentions time to pay back and put it forward. Many people, especially young adults, have not idea that jewelry and ornaments offer wide and great opportunities, not only for just personal reasons, but also as a viable means of financial reward. And that actually speaks quite a bit to your story, Shara, something you didn't get a chance to state. And I want to make sure that they know in your personal story, you shared with me that being an entrepreneur came out of a space of necessity. Can you elaborate on that?
Because my mom was a single parent, she had a lack of finances. I mean, she was, you know, she provided, I don't want to misrepresent and say like, you know, we were extremely poor, but we were poor by the standard. And I was sensitive to it. I was super sensitive to it, and I didn't want to ask her for any lunch money or any spending money. So I had to figure it out. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like kind of in that space, so that there's entrepreneurs that create from that space. And so for me, it was out of necessity. And then the next step was, what do I like to do? What am I interested in? You know? And I think that is always the question. Whether you're working for someone or you're creating something for yourself, it's like, what do I like? What am I into? What's missing? Those are the questions. Those are the next couple of questions.
Michael made another comment. We need stories, but stories that are factual and that tell a personal one. Connection in time of disasters, pandemics is one of the only ways of surviving. And what better way than connecting with a hoop dream? Wow, what a great.
That's nice. Nice. We're gonna have to pull something out of that.
Right. Well, we've got exactly 7 more minutes. Take your a few more, you know, if you've got a couple questions, we'll take them. In the meantime, let's get some social media handles out of the way. Shara, can you share with us your social media handles so people know how to follow you, your website, and your, I guess, you know, any other information you'd like to share?
Okay, well, 88 Dreams is on Instagram at 88 Dreams. You can also find us online at www.hoop88dreams.com. My personal social media handle is at Shara_McHale, MCHAYLE. You can also find Jade's personal Instagram handle at Jade, JADEVERETT. Yeah.
Great.
I put it in the chat so that everyone can see it.
Wonderful. And those of you who haven't had a chance to get to know me, not only am I a professor at FIT, I'm also a TV correspondent and producer for a show called Latinas on CUNY TV. And I want to just kind of have you save the date. I'll be doing another presentation March 8th through the union, looking at the mosaics of parenting. And I'll be sharing some of my ethnography research from last semester. So it should be a great event. So I want to put that date out there, March 8th, as my next event. I'll share my social media as well. You can find me on Instagram, Prof. E. Romero. So that's pretty easy to remember. My Twitter handle is a little bit different. It's actually the name of my first book. Will not be the only, others are on their way. And that handle is free_styling. And so I'll mention that as well. I'm sure many of you are too young to even bother with Facebook, so I won't share that. If you want to learn more about Shara's P&B story, I did publish a book that is around hip hop fashion called Freestyling: How Hip Hop Changed the Fashion Industry. And right now, if you want to learn more about the storyline of women weaved in hip hop and fashion, on Netflix, there's a wonderful documentary called The Remix, Hip Hop Times Fashion, that I'm a part of, that April Walker is a part of, that Shara mentioned, and a number of other women. So that's another great entry point as a resource for you. Please stay in touch with me. I, along with Elizabeth Way from the Museum of FIT, are currently working on a major project that we're really excited about. We're looking to launch in 2023, Fresh, Fly, and Fabulous, 50 Years of Hip Hop Style. We will co-curate this historic fashion exhibition in the museum at FIT, and we will eventually also have an anthology that will be released at the same time. Again, last call for questions before we close out. We've got 3 minutes, so we've got just enough time for one, possibly two more questions. Feel free to put them in the chat. And otherwise, then I'll just, make a short, brief closing statement if we have no other questions. So at this time, please type it in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have to then conclude. All right, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I am going to take it that this is a wrap. I'd love to thank, of course, my evening's guests, Shara McHale and Jade Everett of Hoop 88 Dreams, for this wonderful, intimate, and much needed conversation. Make sure to check out their latest collection at hoop88dreams.com. In fact, they shared with me right before the event that they've created a special code. And if you go to their website and decide to shop, what is the code that people can put in, Shara, that you mentioned, and that will then give them what exactly?
FIT Talk. So again, the code is FIT Talk, and you will get free standard shipping on your order when you enter that promo code in.
All
And
right.
that's going to go live at 10 o'clock, 10 p.m. this evening.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much. I'm Elena Romero. I hope to see you at another FIT event. Thank you again to the Office of the President, Dr. Joyce Brown, the FIT Diversity Council, and every person that made this event possible. A special thank you to Lady in the Office of the President who helped organize and kind of make sure that our RSVPs and our Eventbrite was working. Thank you so much for that help. Have a wonderful evening and hope you have a rest of a great week. Take care and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.